Good morning and welcome to another Morning Java brought to you by our friends at the GetGo Cafe+Market, where right now you can get a whole lot of spiked slushies. That's slushies with alcohol. The newest one that came out for fall, it's Angry Orchard hard cider mixed with like Fireball, so it's cinnamon apple, perfect for fall, so good. You get it behind the register, they tape it up, you take it home and you drink it, spiked slushie. They're great. Check them out. They have new flavors all the time. But we're talking hockey. It seems like there's always new developments with what's happening in the restart and plan for next season. One of the big things being discussed now is how the NHL is going to align its divisions, because you figure with the border closure, you pretty much know that there's going to be an all-Canadian division, and then the issue then is how do you divide up the remaining U.S.-based teams? And Dayan and I did a segment like this before where we talked about how we didn't think that there's any way that the Penguins don't end up with most of the Metro teams in Buffalo. But it seems like one of the proposed ideas gaining steam is that the Penguins could end up in the Central Division, with like Columbus and not, their biggest rivals and Philly, Washington, and, like the New York teams. I mean, Dave, what do you think about where do the Penguins fit in the proposed divisions?
I think they are a true bubble team in the divisional alignments. I think you'll see with the three U.S. based divisions will have 8 teams each. You'll see one that is made up almost entirely of teams from the Northeast. But the question is, will they include the Penguins as opposed to, say, Carolina to fill out the division? Or will the Penguins end up, in more of a Midwestern or Central division with Columbus, Detroit, St. Louis, and teams like that? We have not heard any official proposals yet. I think just about every media member has put forth some suggestions, but that's as far as it's gotten so far. I don't know how much lobbying is going on, with teams. If when I broached this subject just in casual conversation with Jim Rutherford a couple of weeks ago, he said he didn't have any particular preference, that he wouldn't necessarily go in and lobby for any particular placement in a division. And really, if you're not going to have a significant number of fans, if any, in the building, does it really matter whether you're playing your traditional rivals a lot? If the Penguins would end up in a Central Division type setup, perhaps their travel expenses would be a bit higher than they would be if they were playing in a Northeast or Metro division grouping. But I don't think it really matters. I don't know that either would necessarily give them a competitive advantage either.
Yeah, I mean, I know you see, I know like maybe a lot of fans have maybe lost interest during this long shutdown break between seasons, and I think something the NHL is gonna pay attention to is how to get fans back into the game, especially when they can't be there in person. But so I mean, in that regard, would it how much would it hurt having the Penguins not in a division with the Capitals and the Flyers and all those Metro teams if they are in the Central Division with some teams that there really aren't that big rivalries with?
Yeah, I think the only downside for the Penguins would be that they would have some road games, assuming that there's not a hub city set up and that teams would actually be playing in their home cities. They would be playing some games with Central Time Zone starting times, places like St. Louis. But really, I think that the key to how much of a fan following they have, that the major factor in that will be how they fare. If they win a lot of games, people will watch, even if the games start at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever. Conversely, if they would struggle, I don't know that people necessarily would tune in just because they're going to be beaten by the Flyers as opposed to by the Wild, you know.
Yeah, I just think, we don't have that many years left of the Crosby Ovechkin matchup, and just the parallels their careers have had, and not that many years left, especially if Ovechkin wants to finish his career in Russia, which he has talked about wanting to do. I just think it could be a loss if they are in separate divisions for a year.
Oh, I mean, ideally, sure, you would, things would, all the divisions would operate as normal this year. The Penguins would be one of the teams in the Metro, but, this has been anything but a normal year. And I think the people who have missed hockey will be happy enough to have it back, that they won't really, tune out or ignore hockey just because the Penguins didn't necessarily end up in a division that they would have preferred.
Yeah, we just need to get games going again. All right, another proposal that we've seen floating around, something that, we actually know that some NHL teams have looked into, is playing some of their games, their home games outdoors, if it means they can have fans in the stadium, spaced out, which, they wouldn't be able to do otherwise in an indoor arena. Couple reports, the Penguins were one of the teams that apparently looked into it. They looked into both Heinz Field and PNC Park. The issue with Heinz Field, well, one of them would have been that, they could overlap with the Steelers. But what do you think about the idea, Dave, of playing games outdoors, and does it really make any sense?
I give the teams, especially apparently the Kings were the first team to consider this. I give them a lot of credit for some unconventional thinking, trying to come up with a way to get around some of the issues that have been caused by this pandemic. But I honestly don't see how it would be viable on just about any level. Certainly you mentioned, in the case of the Penguins, the Steelers, if they have playoff games at Heinz Field, probably wouldn't appreciate having to design plays to get around the ice rink in the middle of the field. And if I'm not mistaken, if you would have one of these temporary ice surfaces down for an extended period, as presumably would be the case, if the Penguins were to play all or a significant number of their home games outdoors, I think it might do terrible things to the grass at PNC Park. Now, I'm sure you could build the cost of resodding the field there into the rental price that the Penguins would pay. But, that rental price would probably be close to prohibitive to begin with. I mean, the idea of exploring these options like playing outdoors games is to try to salvage a little bit of revenue. But if you're, ending up paying an awful lot of money in rent and for people to staff these venues and things like that, I just don't know that it would make sense from a financial standpoint. And that's without even taking into account the the problems you might have with weather. It's just it's hard to see how this could be made to work, with any sort of guarantee on any level.
Yeah, you can't put a price on putting a team with a winning record at PNC Park. But no, really, the limited fans, I don't think would justify the added cost of maintaining, an outdoor rink for the full 56 game season they're talking about. It's just, and yeah, the weather, like any kind of inclement weather, we've really seen like these outdoor games can, make it harder to play in. I remember the last one the Penguins played it in Philly. It was just kind of misting, like it wasn't like, heavy rain, snow or anything. It was misting, but I remember after players talked about how it really made it harder to see with the visors, and like I know a lot of them were like, oh, they tilted their visors up to be able to see, which is breaking like NHL rules. Like they're not allowed to do that. But and
And remember, the Winter Classic game that the Penguins had with the Capitals actually had a rain delay. It
right.
was supposed to be played in the afternoon and got pushed back to, I believe it was an 8 o'clock start because of heavy rains
Hmm.
on the day of the game. Um, that obviously, weather like that would be a threat not only in Pittsburgh, but just about anywhere else. And while I guess it makes for good TV if you have, a light snow coming down, um, the problems that you could have with weather just seem, like there'd be too much of a gamble there. Plus, these teams presumably would have to commit to playing in these outdoor venues, pretty well in advance. Like the Pirates, would want to know what's going on with PNC Park, and what happens then when you have games that can't be played because of weather and you have to make them up. And I mean, it's just, there's already more than enough complications and headaches that have been caused by this pandemic. I don't know that the teams need to add to the list.
Yeah, I mean, and you figure that it's going to be a pretty tight, condensed schedule, not a whole lot of room for rescheduling, moving games around. It just, if you have a game that would have to be moved because of weather, that would really just create a whole bunch of problems. And then obviously just an unfair advantage for some teams over others if a team has to play outside um, for a whole season for all their home games. Not ideal, probably wouldn't be fair. And I don't, we've seen some of these outdoor games have had bad ice, which, could lead to more injuries. Just all around not a great idea. And it's probably, I mean, it's not going to happen.
It certainly doesn't look like it at this point, although we shouldn't rule out the possibility of the NHL adding a week for games at the end of the season just so the Ravens can make the playoffs.
All right, Dave, in a recent segment we did a couple weeks ago, we talked about which numbers the Penguins should eventually retire. And we kind of settled on, Jágr, Crosby, and Malkin are really the only remaining ones the Penguins have to retire. But, there are a couple borderline guys that, fans want to see honored in some way, like Ron Francis and, Fleury and a couple guys like that. I mean, what options are there that, the Penguins could do to honor those guys without putting their numbers in the rafters?
I would like to see them do something along the lines of the Ring of Honor concept that I believe the Dallas Cowboys pioneered. Somebody might have done something like that before them, but they were the first that I was aware of. And you're right. They're going back to the days of Dave Burrows and Jean Pronovost with this franchise. They have had some outstanding players who made a lasting mark on the franchise and who deserve to be recognized by fans in future generations. But I think that retiring a player's number is a really special honor that you don't want to cheapen by doing it en masse. But it would be nice if they could do something like set aside an area in the arena, for example, a wall to honor players who have made significant contributions, the Paul Coffeys, the Larry Murphys, the Joey Mullins, the Kevin Stevens, people like that, who didn't necessarily do enough to merit having their number retired, but who made major contributions to the team's history.
Yeah, I mean the Ring of Honor that used to be at the Igloo, they kind of kept the same idea, but I mean they have it in the locker room above players' stalls, but not really anywhere where fans can see it. And Jágr's still not on there because he used to be, but then they took him down when he came back into the league. So something where they could get Jágr back in there would be nice. What you're talking about, I remember, I mean, they did have at one of the main gates the first couple years the arena was around. There was like the big columns with I don't know, maybe like 10 for different players, and they had like screens, and you could go up and tap the screens and watch videos of them. But that's not there anymore. They replaced it with a AT&T Sportsnet set. But yeah, I mean, something like the Ring of Honor. I know what Wilkes-Barre used to do. Well, I mean, so they have banners for not retired numbers, but just the big people who have come through there, coaches and players, and they had them hanging up all around the concourses. So you'd pass them, and they still have the banners, but they move them like inside, hanging from the rafters. But I mean, something like that, just spaced out throughout the concourse, would be cool.
Yeah, they, the Penguins, since, I guess going back to Mario Lemieux's arrival, have had a lot of history that they can be pretty proud of, and that, certainly fans who have followed the franchise for a while now, I'm sure enjoy, remembering some of the accomplishments and some of the great hockey they've seen over the years. The Penguins usually do a pretty good job of honoring players and developing concepts of this sort. So I think if they put their minds to it, they could probably come up with a pretty nice creative way to honor their past.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they have a lot of cool things that just aren't accessible to fans, like the Ring of Honor in the locker room. And I know there's like I really like the mural they have in the hallway between the home and the visiting locker rooms, where it's kind of like it over time, like the beginning, like all the great players, and then it progresses. I think that's really cool if they could bring something like that out into the concourse. I remember.
Yeah, I'm sure that would get a lot of attention. That is a really nice encapsulation of the franchise's history. On that mural. I do think that would be a pretty popular feature with fans.
Yeah, I can just speak to when I've been outside, the visiting locker room after like a visiting team morning skate. A lot of the while we're waiting to be let in, a lot of the visiting media really likes looking at that. And I remember one time the Wild were in here, and in the like early Penguins section, there's Sillaps Jr. One of the Wild Riders pointed to it because like Boudreaux was standing out there, just hanging out, and one of the Wild Riders pointed at it and was like, "Hey, didn't you play with Sillaps?" And Boudreaux was like, "How old do you think I am?" With a couple of F-bombs. Sillaps Jr. He's like, "That's Evan Sillaps Jr." But yeah, I mean, Boudreaux seemed to like it. I mean, if they could get something like that on the concourse, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.